Is it going to work? Here we go. Right, so you may have heard various things this week in the news about the 2021 census and the results from the 21 census, particularly around the whole area of religion. And this is one headline that I saw this week. This is from The Guardian on Tuesday. England and Wales now minority Christian countries, census reveals. And this was just one of many headlines that came across in various places. The census results show that there is a drop of the number of people who ticked the box to say that when it came to religion, they would call themselves Christian. So in 2011, there were 33.3 million people who said that they were Christians in the UK, but by 2021, that had dropped to 27.5 million people, which, as you can see from that slide, is still 46.2% of the population. And if you're anything like me, you may well look around the place where you live, you may well look around the place where you work, and you may wonder, where are all these 46.2% of the population who are supposed to be Christian? Do we really believe that 46% of the population is Christian in an active, believing and practicing sense? A report was commissioned and published earlier this year called Talking Jesus, and they've been doing research for a number of years. And they're fairly confident that going back to, say, 2015 onwards, the number of practicing Christians is probably fairly stable at around 6% of the population. And they define practicing Christians as people who attend church at least once a month and who pray and read the Bible at least once a week. And so they reckon that about 6% of the population are practicing Christians. And so what should we make of these results? Well, I think one of the things that they show us is that if about 46% of the population would describe themselves as Christians, but only 6% of the population are active Christians, then there are about 40% of our neighbours whose hearts are open to the gospel. They are the sorts of people who will accept an invitation to a carol service at Christmas. They might not go at any other time in the year, but they may well go at Christmas time. They will believe in some sense that there is a God. When they're in a crisis, they may allow you to pray for them. Now, if you were an alien visiting from outer space, you would probably assume that Christmas is the most important religious festival in the year. The shops have been geared up for weeks, decorations are up, lights are up, Christmas music can be heard, and yet when we look in the Bible, we see very, very little detail about what actually happened. Mark, in his gospel, doesn't mention Christmas at all. John condenses the whole of the Christmas story down into that passage that we read earlier. In fact, he kind of condenses the Christmas story down into one line: the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And in those 14 verses that we read, he also introduces a whole load of themes that crop up throughout his gospel. Now, as an aside, I thought, and this has come from an assembly that I did on Wednesday at Barton. If you follow us on Instagram, you will already know the answers, so just keep quiet. But which of these is the odd one out? Father Christmas, the 25th of December, the donkey, the stable, the innkeeper, or the manger? Which one is the odd one out, and why?
Because it's the only one in the Bible.
Sorry, which?
The manger, because it's the only one mentioned in the Bible.
Very good. I'm fairly confident Mandy didn't look at Instagram earlier in the week, so well done. So the manger is the odd one out, as it is the only one that is mentioned in the Bible story. No donkey, no stable, no innkeeper. I could see the reception teacher's face drop as she saw her nativity play fall apart in front of her eyes in this assembly on Wednesday. And so, for the writers of the Gospels, they don't tell us a great deal about the Christmas story. Most of what we think we know about Christmas has come from other places. But the details that we do know are obviously important because those are the ones that have been included. And many of those details are there to demonstrate to us that this birth is no accident. This birth was foretold hundreds of years before by prophets like Isaiah and Micah. Excuse me a minute. And this is all part of a plan that goes right back to the first pages in the Bible. And as well as the Word, John introduces Jesus as the light. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. A little bit later on in John's Gospel, Jesus describes himself as the light of the world. And this theme of light and dark runs throughout the whole of John's Gospel. John sets it up here, but it goes right the way through his Gospel. Jesus is introduced as the light, the true light, the creative force behind the universe, and yet he was rejected. There were those that chose darkness over light. When you came in, you may have noticed some of the lights outside the church, but when you leave, you will definitely notice the lights outside of the church, because the darker it gets, the more obvious the light becomes. And thank you.
Impressive.
Sorry?
Very impressive.
Good. And thank you. I think we need a round of applause to Bob and to James. Did you help or not? Yes. So Bob and James, a round of applause to Bob and James for putting. Oh yes, of course you did that, James. You put it all up, didn't you, last week? Yes. So thank you very much for putting this display out the front, and hopefully as people go up and down this road over these next few weeks, these lights will speak something to them. But the darker it gets, the more the light shines. Most people agree that this winter is going to be tough for lots of people. Winter is often a tough time in the year. It gets dark early in the evening, it's dark when you get up in the morning, it's cold, it can even be wet. And on top of that, this year we've got all the struggles of worrying about heating, worrying about the expense of everything going up, and all sorts of cuts that are being made. Jesus in Matthew chapter 5. Iffy, I'm going to hand back to you in a minute, so I can have a drink. But in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus told his disciples that they were the light of the world, and that they should let their light shine before others. And we're going to be thinking about that in a few minutes' time. Just before Iffy comes and introduces our next two songs, we have a video, which you saw last year, but I really like it, and so you're going to watch it again. Right, I thought, before we talk any more about light, if I can have my next slide up, please, Anastasia. That's the one. I thought I would see how much you know about light. So, how long does it take light to travel from the sun to the earth? Does it take 7 minutes and 30 seconds, 8 minutes and 20 seconds, or 9 minutes and 10 seconds? If you think it is A, 7 minutes and 30 seconds, put your hands up. If you think it is B, 8:20, and if you think it is C, 9:10, and if you haven't put your hand up, the correct answer is 8 minutes and 20 seconds. So award yourself a point if you've got that one right. Okay, next question. What's the maximum distance you could see a typical candle flame from with the naked eye? Could you see a candle from 1.6 miles, 2.5 miles, or 3.4 miles? So no binoculars, no telescopes, just with the naked eye, assuming there was nothing in the way, obviously. And it was dark, yes. So under all the favourable circumstances, who thinks the maximum distance you would be able to see a candle is 1.6 miles? 2.5? 3.4? The correct answer, apparently, is 1.6 miles. Right, and this one, who invented the light bulb? Was it A, Albert Einstein? Was it B, Thomas Edison? Or was it C, Humphrey Davy? If you think it was A, put your hand up. If you think it was B, put your hand up. If you think it was C, put your hand up. Well, I think there might be some disputes, but I think that, according to what the research I did at about 2 o'clock this afternoon, it could be Humphrey Davy. Oh, right, so Sharon's backing me up here. It's certainly it's just, I mean, go and look it up on Wikipedia along with hash browns and other things you want to look up on Wikipedia, Karen. But I think often it's attributed to Edison, but it may have been Humphrey Davy. Right, no more questions about light. Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." When you read the book of Acts, you see that the early church grew rapidly. Even though they were experiencing lots of persecution, they grew. They grew rapidly, particularly amongst the poor and the most marginalized people in society. And the poor and the marginalized knew that they lived in a dark world. And so they recognized the light of Jesus as that light shone brightly through the love of his people, through the hope and the care and the provision that they brought. But the rich and the powerful and the influential, they were quite happy with how things were. And so for them, things didn't seem as dark. Things seemed all right. Apparently, 43.3% of people in South Cambs answered the religion question in the 2021 census to say that they had no religion, and 45.3% of people said that they were Christian. And you will know from living in Comberton or in Toft or some of the other villages around here that there are lots of people who, at least on the surface, seem very comfortable with how things are. They probably wouldn't agree with Paul's assessment that we live in a dark world. And whilst the pandemic and the lockdown, it may have shaken some of the foundations to their lives for a little while, now that things have got almost back to normal, their outlook has gone back to what it was before. I think it's really interesting that when we do things like Warm Hub, or we do things like the Jubilee celebration on the Rec, some people really struggle with the concept that we're giving stuff away for free. They are desperate to make a donation for whatever it is that they have taken. And I wonder how much of that comes out of an attitude of, well, I'm okay. An attitude of pride. An attitude of, I can fend for myself, I don't need any help, I don't need your handouts, I can pay my own way, I can sort out my own problems, I am in control of my own destiny. But I think the events of the coming months may well just kind of pull back the curtain a little bit more for lots of people who will start to see that we do live in a dark world where the rulers and authorities and the powers are opposed to God's rule and to God's reign. But within the darkness, the light of Jesus will shine more brightly. You've got a piece of paper on your seat which has got that verse that I read from Matthew chapter 5 on it. And our time has almost gone. But what I want you to do is have a think about, specifically for you over these next few weeks, what's it going to look like for your light to shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven? What's it going to look like in your context for you? What is that light going to look like? And I'm going to pray, and then I'm just going to give us a few minutes to write down what we think God is saying to us. As in my situation, what's it going to look like for God's light to shine in my life and for others to see it? So I'm going to pray, and then we'll just have a few minutes, and then I'll hand back to Iffy for our final song.